Alrighty, hello there and welcome to the Newbie's Guide to Tactics Ogre. Alright, so I wanted to try to make a 15 minutes or less thing covering over the basics of what somebody needs going into Tactics Ogre to understand the thing, enjoy it, what have you. There's a hell of a lot of systems to this game. I like to use the metaphor of a beach. Some people like to hang out in the shallow end, just splash around, enjoy their time, go home. Some people like to go into the deep end, go down there, explore, find a new fish every single time. There are some of those folks like myself that have played this game for a decade. Then you have other folks that are looking for some of the deeper stuff in the shallow end and just end up giving themselves a headache. So, alright, with that all said, how do you make your teams good? First of all, something that's often misunderstood. This is not FFT. A lot of things from FFT, in fact, most of the things from FFT are in here. However, they're presented very differently. So, when you're setting up a weapon, that is not the entirety of your setup. The weapon by itself has an attack value. This is more or less your armor penetration value. That is what you need to beat an enemy's defensive score in order to be able to actually do damage to them. Do not try to figure out the math of this. It is a constantly moving scale. You'll just give yourself a headache. What you need to know, if you want to make your character good at being able to pierce past defenses, keep them consistently on a particular weapon skill. If they started off with spears and you like spears, keep them using spears. Anything in this game can be viable. You may have heard bows are overpowered. It's kind of situational. I'll get to that in a moment. But what you need to know, diversify the kinds of stuff that everybody's using. If you have everybody using one weapon type, if you get some of the better stuff down the road, you won't be able to share that around for the entire group. You'll only have one, maybe a couple of them. Suddenly you have a couple characters that are falling behind. So, since you tend to get stuff fairly randomly, it's a better idea to try and diversify your team as much as possible. This is both for options as well as just general quality of life. Second thing, for new folks, what you always want to do is get anatomy. This is a skill that will give you basically improvements to all of your moves every time that you're fighting human characters in any way. Now you may notice from the wording of this says anytime that human characters are, well, involved. So, since your character is already a human character, this means every time something's attacking them, they are going to get a defense to their defensive threshold. Anytime they're attacking something that is a human character, they will get roughly about 4 as an increase to that penetration there per rank, give or take. Now, this applies to most things that have a rank to them. So, for example, spears, like right here, this guy is getting an extra 12 to his attack score, as well as an extra 9 to his accuracy off of this weapon skill here. If he's fighting a dragon, that also is an extra 8 attack. If he's fighting a person, another 8 attack. Something that's often misunderstood, and I see a lot of guys putting this as well, strengthen over here. If we go down a bit of a ways, because there's a lot of skills in this, strengthen does not necessarily boost your attack score. It doesn't do that at all. So strengthen essentially gives you a bonus. So the way that it works, attack and defense are checked, stats are checked. At that point, it applies bonuses. So whatever attack is left over, like I'm sure many folks that have run into this game that got stuck, had those issues where they did 1 damage. So what Strengthen does is it scales up whatever's left over. If there's a decimal, it'll scale it up to some single-digit thing. If there's some double-digit thing, it'll probably scale it up to a bigger double-digit thing. If it was already triple digits, that sucker is going to the moon. So Strengthen will essentially be a roughly 20% bonus per rank that you end up taking on this. The buff works the same way. So, even if you're barely getting any damage through, you may have noticed from your very first fights that you have quite a few different consumables available. If you ever are finding yourself in a situation where you can't necessarily hurt something, you don't want to, like, many times I see the misunderstanding of like, oh crap, I gotta go and grind, it's an RPG, I grind all day, this is what I do, it's time to put the nose to the whetstone. No. Don't do that. Again, you're just going to drive yourself nuts. There's a lot of stuff that you can potentially do here. So, easiest and simplest way that you actually have a couple options available for. You go over here, your Dynasty King is made. You usually have a few of these. You can buy more at the store at any point in the game. Anyone can use this. There's no skill requirement. Additionally, you have Arion Plumes. Same situation. You get less of these from the story itself, but they're pretty cheap to buy in the store. Additionally, if you didn't notice, all of these cards down here have a lot of buffs and debuffs to them as well. So what you need to know is that even if your damage is fairly low, if you breach an enemy and you strengthen the attacker, even if it's fairly low in terms of what they're actually getting through, unless they're literally just using a butter knife that they started the game with and they're fighting the end boss or something, this will at least get some damage through. It's one way to just push on through that way. If you find yourself in a situation where stuff is hurting you more than you can potentially take physically, Fortify. Same thing if you have an issue with magical stuff, get a crystallized flame. I don't believe I have... yeah, let's just go to the store, actually. Let's look at all this stuff, because, yeah, most of this stuff is available right from the very start. There's a hell of a lot of things that they give you, more than you may initially think to actually look through. So yeah, crystallized flame down here. That'll give you resistance against casters. That's probably a bit more useful early on. You have stuff with issues with stuff hitting you too much, get dodge. You have stuff issues with archers constantly harassing you, sidestep off of the filter of ashes. You're literally using smoke bombs to deal with the archers. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in here. There's a bunch of different options. I would recommend the defensive ones over the offensive ones in most cases, but just so you know, the options are there. All right. So additionally, if you didn't know, we'll cover crafting in a moment, by the way, but if you didn't know, pretty much right at the start of the game, you will have access to a lot of things in the spells here, especially stuff like Charm. If you weren't aware, you can use these with any character. It will check their stats to, see if they're any good at casting. Actually, around the mid-game, you can start putting Balder items on everybody so that they automatically are just pretty much casters by default. However, what you need to know is that, yeah, anybody can use these. It'll use up one of the spell books instead of learning it. And yeah, you can do a lot of extra tricks this way as well. They actually give you a lot of money at the start of the game for a reason. Which actually is probably another note. The 30k you start with, as well as the 40k you get over the course of that beginning first chapter. Yeah, don't get used to that. You'll usually burn through all that stuff trying to make your builds work, and then realize that you're looking a little bit strapped for cash for quite a while. It's kind of mostly for story reasons, but yeah, it's just something to note. So yeah, things like Charm, Sleep, Poison, Paralysis, you have access to a lot of things. Personally, I would recommend in the very first chapter, pick up a few of these exorcisms. They're relatively cheap. Usually 4 of them will do the job. Basically, if a ghost goes down, they have to be exorcised in order to get rid of them entirely. Anyone can technically do it. You don't have to wait for the cleric to actually do their job. Now, that all said, let's talk about craftables for a second. You have craftable upgrades for pretty much every piece of equipment out there. However, this doesn't mean that you should sit there and try to upgrade absolutely everything. There are it varies. If you see a character that is having issues, maybe go see if they've got some upgrades available to them. Some of them are a simple penetration or bonus damage upgrade. Like I was mentioning earlier, bonuses are applied at the very end. That's how stuff tends to scale up. But yeah, that all said, by the way, these bonuses are based off a percentage. I don't remember if I said that earlier. But usually, here's what it ends up coming down to. Usually, you end up getting, some kind of fancy version, followed by a generic version, followed by, something unusual. Like right here, with spears, the Scorpion +1, potentially you've got a nice handy poison spear available throughout most of the game. You can use this into the end game if you have skills that are high enough. Like I said earlier, if you keep somebody on those same weapon skills, you can really just use whatever you want. You'll still at least do some damage. Again, this is not FFT. You're not optimizing for what does the big damage. Actually, something that I see folks run into more often than not is they'll go and they'll see, hey, crossbows and bows, these things are so dang good, and they're completely broken the game, and then they'll get into the end game, and they've used nothing but bows and crossbows, they haven't diversified whatsoever, and then they see a lot of characters running around with deflect, and suddenly, about 10 up to 60% of the time, their arrows are just getting deflected entirely, so those big numbers don't matter when there's a skill that can essentially nullify that damage outright. So suddenly they find themselves, only being able to reliably damage something with their finishers. So okay. That said, bows are pretty good. I just would recommend only keeping maybe 2 or 3 characters that actually use them. Because yes, archers, fantastic. They're the only character, or the only generic characters, that will be able to use longbows. If you end up keeping Vice to the end of the game, yes, he can use one as well. But generally speaking, yes, you want to only keep a couple of archers. Alright, next thing we should discuss, class levels. One thing that gets misunderstood, I know I've harped on this already, but trying to get yourself even levels across the board. Do not do this. Well, you can, but with an exception and a bit of an understanding. So, every character, if you look over here on the right, you'll see their stats. So, these are their stats currently. These are their personal stats or their base stats. Generally speaking, about 25 to 38 is going to be what you're seeing out of the store for most characters. Generally around 40, 50 is where they end up by the end of the game. If you end up getting higher than that, fantastic. Now, thing is, they're nice. Skills are going to give you nicer bonuses, but those are the ones that make your overall numbers go up, so to speak. That all said, what do they actually do? So, for the purposes of understanding it all, strength is just your overall physical bulk. Makes you hit harder, makes you take physical hits a little bit better. Vitality scales down incoming physical damage and magical damage as well. So all damage scaled down by vitality. Dexterity gives you accuracy and attack bonus, so pretty handy there. Agility will be your accuracy score. Avoidance is your ability to avoid everything. This is absolutely everything. Like, pretty much all skills will be using avoidance to check if it can hit. Intelligence. This will be your primary magic casting skill. Mind is a basically mix between offensive and defensive for magic, and then resistance is straight defensive on magic. Usually, you won't be necessarily boosting these intentionally that much. They just kind of go up throughout the course of the game. Why am I bringing that up for these classes? Well, every time that a character wins a fight and their class levels up, they get an 0.1 to an 0.4 bonus to that class's stats. That doesn't seem like very much, but considering you get a brand new class and then suddenly you level them up, you turn 7 people into that particular thing, you run over to Tynemouth Hill over here, which is going to be your first random battle site. Suddenly, hey, look at that. They're getting a 1 to 2 point increase to all stats across the board. That's pretty fantastic. So if you want to absolutely metagame it, go for that. You don't have to. I should point out, as much as there's a lot said about that particular approach being solid, skills are going to matter a lot more, and I think probably the best example is going to be right here. This is a run I was working on for a little bit here. Technically an older save, but anyway. So, what we have here is a character that has basic stats coming right out of the shop, pretty much under 40 across the board. Do you see a weapon? Do you see anything other than his ability to throw rocks? No, this is Mr. Chuck Throwhard with the Order of Pelting Fury here. This was a throwing rock only run that I was doing. Point being, you can make anything work. Like any weapon, any skill, any attack type, there are ways to scale it up. You just kind of fiddle around and figure out what exactly makes that thing work. So yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it there. Go for anatomy. It'll always boost your attack bonus. If it's enough to make a throwing rock do potentially over 100 damage, there you go. And that's only at rank 1. So that's pretty solid. Another thing about levels. You may notice this guy is over-leveled for this part in the story. They are right at the very beginning. They're in Chapter 2 here, I believe. So what you should note is that the story will allow you to over-level the units in the story. I do not recommend sitting there and grinding it out, but, you have it as an option. However, if you get it past 25 or so, this will vary based on battles. The lowest I've seen, I think, is like a 22 or something like that. If you get past a certain level, the game will scale up on you. This means that it turns into New Game Plus. If you go to a lower level class, as long as you're on your first run, you're just fine. It doesn't matter. It'll always scale this based off the highest level in your team. So be careful with over-leveling. It's not the way to go. If you ever find yourself in a point where you're seeing like, oh, I'm at the same level, but there's nothing I can do to possibly win this, use your buffs and debuffs and things like that. There's always tricks. I have literally... Here, you know what? I feel like this needs some evidence. It's possible to beat this game without any skills whatsoever, just using basic stuff you find in the store. I think I have it here. But yeah, you can get through the entire thing using no skills, using no grinding whatsoever, and then you just get through the entire thing using items as it were. And apparently the save is on the completely other direction here, so we'll see if we can find that particular one. Just point being, yeah, you can make anything work, just kind of stick to it. Apparently, yeah, I guess it must be in the other emulators' save files. Well, that's a little bit annoying. Okay. Additionally, level does not matter as much as you might think. To show the difference of like how big of a difference skills can make as opposed to levels themselves, let's take a look at the level 1 run. So this is one from a little bit ago. is go in here to Farampa, take a little bit of a fight, and we'll actually cover how to handle a couple of other situations as well. So we need to get rid of one. Okay, fine, fair enough. So these guys are going to be at 6 levels lower than the enemy team here. Bear in mind, at this point in the run, they can still one-shot units 21 levels higher than them. So, anyhow, this is just based off weapon skills and buffs alone. So, in terms of the kinds of tricks you can pull off with spell books and things like that, this actually plays into it as well. We can go for a strengthen buff and things like that, but right here, we're in a situation where we've got a few buffs available on hand. So, like right here, we want to be able to stun, right? So we take this Benumb Scroll. You get these, I believe, in like the end of Chapter 2. So suddenly, every shot that he lands will have a guaranteed chance to inflict stun. It should be noted, by the way, archers and warriors come with archers, warriors, and Terror Knights actually come with abilities that give a 100% chance to hit. This actually causes their secondary effects. Like if you're using, I believe it was like a Claymore +1 that has a breach effect on it, it will have a 100% chance to do that. So anyway, so we now we'll have a bunch of those. Additionally, we want to make sure that he's going faster, so we'll go over here. We'll put a boon of swiftness on him. Go ahead and boost his speed up a bit. And bear in mind, this guy's stats are like, I think, 36 to 38 somewhere. There really wasn't too much that could be done as far as that went in this particular run. But then also we want to increase his damage by 25%. So every element has Instill. This additionally means that if they are augmenting that element, which we talked about earlier, they'll be able to boost up said element. Again, I usually recommend keeping an element available from the very start of the game, so that you potentially can have something like that on hand. So yeah, in the end game, all weapons switch over to this augmented variant, which yeah will cause you to do a whole lot of extra damage. Now, right here. They're all going in, and this guy, for reference, is running maximum rank crossbows as well as maximum rank blowguns. You might be wondering why he has all of these additional skills just kind of sitting around. So I mentioned earlier that everything applies offensively and defensively, and this character, well, they're level 1. They need to take a lot of damage from a lot of different types of weapons. However, they can't afford to do so. If they didn't have these skills on here, they would get one shot by, daggers, fists, bows, what have you. But because they have them there, they actually take like normal to negligible damage from those particular things. Am I recommending that build? God, no. So yeah, these are just basic things you start off with. It's all that this guy can actually can even equip. So without any strengthen or anything, he's already doing normal damage to this dude over here. If we apply that anatomy bonus, we see we're also getting pretty decent damage against this guy, but our overall penetration for everything is still fairly low. We're getting some damage through, so we're just going to go ahead and backtrack a little bit to our last turn. So for the sake of comparison, we're going to have this guy run up. We're going to have him put an area ion plume on him for that strengthen. So there we go. Pop it on there. Give him a upgrade of about 20% to his maximum damage. And we'll see where it ends up pushing it. Like I mentioned earlier, because everything is based off of sliding percentages, this means that 20% is not going to be a flat 20%. Anyone that's ever dealt in sales before would know that, yes, suddenly it's 12 boosting up from 30. If we're talking about that one, however, over here with our anatomy bonus, we're seeing an increase against this guy as well. So pretty solid there. It's scaling up nicely. However, we can do a little bit better, I think. So we're going to go back to this guy. Actually, no, we won't. We're going to wait a little bit longer. So we see that his next turn is going to be coming up relatively quick, so we're just going to leave him there for now. We've already... I believe this was the one where he got boosted up, correct? Let's see. No, it's not the one where he was strengthened, so first unit will go over here. They will strengthen them up. There we go. Get that maximum damage boost going. I will note while we're talking here, it probably won't apply much to this particular case, but as a bit of a side note, there are pretty notable accuracy differences between different angles of attack for different units. So, for example, if this guy were to run up and try to hit this guy from the side, he would have 70% accuracy. If he were to try and attack him from the front, he would have 60. So this can go up or down depending on how evasive the unit in question is. I mean, this is at maximum ranks, so he's doing pretty solid, all things considered. But this actually has a bottomed out value. So attacking from the front, the lowest it can ever go for a physical attack is 25%. From the side, it's 40%, and from the back, it's 55%. You might be wondering why this is necessary. Well, again, this is not FFT. You are expected to roll the dice. You're expected to run into those situations where you basically are just sitting there rolling a bunch of 25% because it's the middle of a thunderstorm. They keep hitting you with false flight on your archers, and you're just sitting there like, you know what? I just need to keep sniping for those 25% until something lands. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. You might say, hey, you know, I can't do the thing effectively. That's not how the Ogre series works. This is not a series about doing everything perfectly right every single time. Everything goes according to plan. It's the exact opposite. The entire series is built around the concept of being a big old slog. It's basically trench warfare, as I've heard it described. They're essentially going through this whole big slog. Your fights end up breaking down. It's just dirty fighting on both sides. And there we go. Suddenly we've almost doubled the damage against this Griffin. Won't really change against this guy because he's not the one that's breached, but okay. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have him go and eat a few items. So these are going to boost his TP by 50%, just to kind of speed things up. They actually technically boost your stats very slightly, but again, this is kind of the same as when you pick up a card or something like that. It's just something meat items do. Now, why am I doing this? Well, it's to show you that when it comes to your finishers, a lot of them come with a bonus that is meant to allow them to be viable all game. Some of them for their debuffs, some of them from for their damage, but sometimes the effects can be outright hilarious. So that's what we're going to do right here. Just kind of show you that yes, technically anything is possible. Technically anything can be viable. I mean, for a while I've tested with all kinds of different weapons for this particular game, and all kinds of different funny stuff would happen. Now, I mentioned earlier, you don't really want to invest in revival items too much, and you might be wondering why on earth I'm sitting on a stack of 31 of these here. Well, I wouldn't ever recommend buying them. You can actually... The first map that you start off with, Tynemouth, it's one that's definitely worth noting a decent bit, because there's a lot of items that you can get from there. Well, they can be potentially useful, for example, Blessing Stones, you can get up to 3 of them per fight there. Additionally, if you have a character that knows how to use Steal, even at rank 1, they will be able to steal them from the Cleric 100% of the time. Well, that is to say the steal chance itself is still about 34%. However, they will always carry 1 on them. So if you have 3 Clerics that ended up spawning in, you can essentially steal 3 and then have them drop 3 anyway. Not really the most optimal way to do it, but hey, it's there as an option. And by the way, we mentioned this guy's skills earlier. He actually can steal from anything there. Just a little bit of a side note, since I know it's dragging on a little longer here, because I wanted to show off this situation. The steal thing, it's basically going to be for crafting materials for the most part. You tend to get better quality materials as stuff goes on. The only time you're ever going to be able to actually steal equipment is from one guy deep in Frompa Forest. There's just a blue guy that spawns alongside a bunch of dragons, and you can only steal that item once you have, I believe, rank 3. So it's not exactly what I'd call optimal, but, it's there as a potential option. And okay, so yada yada yada, everybody's doing their thing, everybody's knocking stuff around everywhere, and okay. So this isn't even max rank, this is rank 6. So you might say, wait a minute, it's 99, how's that a bit of a big deal? Well, if we look at these different types of finishers here, Brimstone Hail is one that scales damage. This means that it's able to, well, it will always scale up based off of your TP here. Why do I mention this? Well, everything past 100 will typically add... I mean, right now it's going down into decimals because this guy is level 1, but it'll typically add about one point of damage per point. So if you ever wondered what's the point of your increased TP skill, that's why. Some of them, though, will be multi-hit skills, and these will usually scale off accuracy, like right here. We've got a Death Whale over here. Is a triple hit move that boosts their attack significantly and causes them to attack to hit 3 times. So that is 300 damage coming out of a level 1, and that was on a fairly tanky unit compared to this part of the game. If we were to go back and use that on somebody else, you might be saying, wait a minute, but that guy was breached. That's cheating. Well, this one over here isn't breached. He does 85 to that. If we go over here, use it on this poor bastard, where we actually have an additional bonus. Once again, like, this will basically one-shot anything. So there's all kinds of stuff like that all over the dang place, just so you know. So, like I said, everything can be made viable. I've done runs using pretty much every weapon type in this game. You can even make throwing rocks viable. It's just a matter of figuring out what makes it work. So, alright. That all said, we covered earlier the whole spell thing. A lot of folks have issues dealing with dragons and such in the early game. I don't have a save to show it off at... Actually, wait a minute, I totally do. Hang on. Let's see if I have that save. So much for 15 minutes or less, huh? Whatever. We'll make it 30 minutes or less. It's Tactics Ogre. It's like a 600-hour game. Or let's just... let's just make it work. Alright, so let's see... Do we, by any chance... Yeah. No, that's... Wait a minute. How on earth is this... Well, I have no idea how this is a 181-hour file, but screw it. Oh, this must be a New Game Plus or something. But okay. So either way, we're at a relatively low level, but there's a dragon here, you know. They're doing the dragon thing as they do. They're actually a little bit of a higher level than they normally would be at this point, because, you know, just New Game Plus things. But okay. So if we go over to your scrolls and things, you go over to ye old dragon, still does damage. Like, granted, this guy is going to be, can come in here with our forbidden magic and stuff. Alright, so I decided to cut it a little bit for brevity here, so here's long and short of it. You have issues with that dragon at the start, or any kind of golems or whatever else. Golems would usually recommend something like poison. For something like dragons or whatnot, you know, charm, sleep, any kind of magic attacks out of the store, you can just buy them. They'll do the job just fine. Even on characters that aren't really built out for that, they'll usually have enough intelligence on them to at least give them a good little slap there. As long as you're using doing double digits, you're usually doing just fine. Again, this is not really a game about sprinting. It's about the journey. So, yeah, if you're doing double digits, you're fine. Next little kind of minor thing here, yeah, as far as golems go, as far as just units you don't want to deal with in general, sometimes you don't have to deal with them. You really don't have to deal with a lot of stuff in this game. So, for example, you got charm here. You can just charm them, have them on your side. Golems don't tend to resist stuff terribly well. Well, that is to say, they don't tend to avoid debuffs terribly well. Traditionally, throughout most of the series, they're weak to magic, and this one, their actual vitality is so dang high that they'll actually just plink off most magic stuff, but debuffs still do the job just fine. With that being said, you've got knights that you get at the start of the game. They've got access to Rampart, which, well, you've got Rampart Aura, I should say. So you can essentially just lock them down. Sometimes, you know, if nothing else works, you just go ahead and slap somebody into a knight, slap them into the front row. You just have them sit there as a wall. Like, you just basically go and you're playing Go at that point. So have him turn him into a knight. You have him go down here. I don't believe... Yeah, it's not going to show up on his list yet because he's only level 4, but something like a Rampart Shadow, you just slap that down. You can keep somebody locked away on the completely other end of the map. Who cares? They're not a problem anymore. You can slap up to a maximum of 10 of those things, so you can kind of go nuts with that. If you want to do that a little bit quicker, you also got barricades over here on the rune fencers. And you might be saying, wait a minute, it's like a 4 health object, which, I mean, I guess you might not know that necessarily, but it's like a 4 health object. Why would that block anything? Well, here's the thing. The only time the barricades, Rampart Shadows, or pumpkins, or whatever the hell you want to put in other units' way is ever going to get damaged is with AoE attacks. So, yeah, the AI does not know how to target them, so, you know, abuse them as you will. There actually is a funny trick some people use to level up cudgels really fast, which is to turn somebody into a cleric, evacuate all the rest of their team. You actually get some stones early on. I forget if you get them by this fight. There's shifting stones that you get from certain fights in the game. But yeah, you just like evacuate everybody, and then you just kind of sit there. Just turn the AI to auto attack, and the two will just smack each other with sticks until one of them dies. It's interesting. Anyway, so if there's any other questions, do let me know. Hopefully this covered most of the stuff that people run into. I feel like the damage thing is kind of the big one. A lot of times folks don't seem to realize that, yeah, you can recruit other types of units. Actually, we should probably cover that real quick. I know, we're losing a little bit of brevity here, but okay. If you didn't know, there's different recruit skills on different classes. As soon as you learn them, everybody can use them. But for example, wizards, if you want to recruit lizards early on, you go to your wizards. I don't know if they picked it specifically just for, wizards like magic lizard stuff. I don't know. Or if it's just for the sake of a pun. Who knows? But point being, wizards would be your go-to if you want to learn cokes. If you want to get golems, which funnily enough, pumpkin heads count as golems. You would get warlocks later in the game. If you want to get skeletons and ghosts, you would need necromancers later on in the game. If you want to learn how to recruit people, well, you would just go to your local knight and learn how to use recruit. These are all at level 5. They're pretty readily available. Once you get beastmasters and things like that, that's when you would get that one. Oh, actually, one last note that I feel would be really useful for a lot of new folks. Advanced classes. So the fight that we were showing off earlier, where we ran into Sistina for the first time, that's our first. And actually, there's 2 good examples very early on. Your first battle at Almarca Castle, every time you go through, you will get 3 knight marks from the knight that you kill at that one. That is the first time you ran into a knight, he's guaranteed to drop those 3 marks. That first beastmaster you run into over here in Archopolis of Rhyme, that is the first time that you run into a beastmaster. He will drop his 3 beast marks as long as he drops a bag. The AI can drop either cards or a bag. Most of the time they will drop the bag. Basically what it comes down to is the first time that you see an advanced class, go kill it. If it drops a bag, odds are you just got 3 copies of that class. So, pretty useful thing to know. Like, for example, Dragoons, the first time you run into them is when you circle back to Tynemouth in most cases, in which case, yes, they will drop those 3. Usually, the next time you run into Almarca, there will be some Warlocks over there, Witches, Warlocks, whatever you want to call them. They'll end up dropping those 3. Once you end up hitting Farampa, they always have a chance to drop their stuff, and actually, once you pick up a Rogue Mark, that'll be the earliest that you can unlock Rogues. You can actually steal the class marks from any class that you run into, and if you're wondering, hey, what about the boss classes? Kind of. There's a couple characters that are able to use either variants of or the actual versions of boss classes, and you can actually steal unique class marks as well. A couple more little detail things, just kind of on the advanced end of things, I suppose. If you're wondering where on earth you pick up the Priest, so Kashua's class, if you need more of her class marks, Farampa, the first clerics you run into, going down the right side of Farampa, you can steal those class marks off them. If you're wondering about the dark version of that class, later on in the game, you can steal them off of enemy clerics in kind of the end game big ol' gauntlet area. And actually, after level 30, all Knight Commander bosses will have a chance to drop Knight Commander marks. I feel like those are the 3 that are probably the most obscure. If you're wondering, once you unlock Fusiliers, like let's say you didn't know about that one, once you unlock this area and you are taking the boat heading back, this region right here, the beach, can actually drop those Fusilier marks for you. There's Fusiliers that'll spawn there, but only if you're coming from that direction. And I think that more or less covers some of the crazy obscure stuff. If you're wondering, because I mentioned this mostly because somebody asked for some of the like DLC characters and things like that down the road. I won't cover exactly how to get all those here. I would recommend looking up a guide. Actually, I'll put a link in the description, but there's a recruitment guide that I don't know if Rakes put it together or somebody else did, but it'll basically cover any kind of special recruitment scenarios they may run into. Some of them are oddly specific. Again, this is a game that they intended for you to go through like a dozen times before you even started doing the DLC content. So yeah, and I guess the last little note here, your first time through, don't try to grind everything out, don't try to optimize. Just make a bunch of characters that you think look fun, and then just make those builds work from there. Like, don't go for the maximum numbers on everything all the time. Don't always think like, oh, this is the one category that'll beat all things. Everything has a counter. The AI will absolutely just own you in the end game if you try to go for all the extra content, if you ran down that route. I don't know if that was intended, or if it just kind of a matter of the crazy, crazy lengths that this game went to for balancing. But anyway, like I mentioned earlier, somebody over-dedicated on bows will probably get really annoyed at deflect. Somebody that really over-dedicated on DPS characters might get really annoyed once they try to go to the Palace of the Dead. Any random fairy or gremlin comes up, uses a virtuous dance, suddenly they have to deal with taking out their own guy who can one-shot everybody. So there is a strength and weakness to this game, just so you know. So always try to diversify, always try to keep your defensive options on hand, just try to keep your mind open, so to speak. This is not FFT. Many of those skills from FFT are here. They're all here in a completely different form. Yes, even Hamido. The entirety of the Swordmaster class is basically about using Preempt, which is like Hamido but actually balanced, because you have to reactivate it every round. But yes, so it's all here somewhere. It just works a little differently. So I hope this helped. Let me know, like I said, if you have any additional questions. And yeah, have yourself a good time. Take care.